Hello, everyone. James is here. Welcome again to Easy English Talks podcast. Today, we're taking a deep dive into a topic that I know a lot of you are curious about, moving from an A2 to a B2 English level. You know, it's that leap where you go from understanding the basics to really feeling confident expressing yourself.
That's right. Imagine going from ordering food to debating the ending of your favorite book in English.
Yeah, it's a game changer.
It is.
It definitely is. And we're going to break down what that journey looks like, focusing on practical steps you can take in each area: vocabulary, grammar, listening, speaking, reading, and even writing.
Yeah, we'll unpack each skill and give you some specific strategies to level up so you can not only understand English better, but actually use it in a more sophisticated way.
Okay, let's dive right in. First up, the dreaded vocabulary.
Hey.
What kind of word power are we talking about when moving from A2 to B2?
Well, think of it this way. At A2, you're comfortable with about 1,500, 2,000 words. Enough for everyday conversations, but at B2, you're looking at almost double that. 3,000, 4,000 words. This lets you talk about more complex topics and understand nuanced meanings.
Whoa, that is a serious jump. So how do we conquer this vocabulary mountain without getting overwhelmed? Any secret techniques?
There's no magic bullet, but consistency is key. Aim to learn like 5-7 new words daily. But here's the twist. Don't just memorize lists. Imagine you learn the word ubiquitous. Instead of just repeating it, think of examples. Smartphones are ubiquitous these days, or bad puns are ubiquitous on this podcast.
Okay, some of my puns are top-notch.
Of course, of course.
But I get your point. Using the word in context makes it stick.
Yeah.
What about those flashcard apps everyone is talking about? Are they worth it?
They can be very helpful, especially apps like Anki that use spaced repetition. It's like having a personal trainer for your vocabulary. The app quizzes you on words just as you're about to forget them, reinforcing your memory.
That's clever. So it's not just about cramming, it's about timing. But beyond apps, how about learning new words more organically? What would you suggest?
Immersion is key. Read English newspapers, books, or even online articles about your hobbies. You'll naturally encounter new words in context, making it easier to understand and remember them.
Reading. A great excuse to finally tackle that English novel I've been putting off. But before we get into reading, let's talk about listening. What's the difference between A2 and B2 listening skills?
At A2, you can catch the gist of basic conversations, but B2 requires you to understand more complex discussions, lectures, maybe even follow a debate on the radio.
So listening to my favorite English songs on repeat isn't enough anymore.
It's a good start, but you need to actively engage with a variety of audio. Podcasts are great for this. You can even find transcripts for many podcasts, so you can read along if you get stuck.
That's a great tip. Transcripts can really help bridge that gap.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people find speaking the most nerve-wracking part. What does speaking confidently look like at the B2 level?
At B2, you can hold your own in deeper conversations. Imagine discussing a current event, explaining your opinion on a movie, or even participating in a lighthearted debate, all in English.
Wow, that does sound impressive. But getting to that level can feel daunting. Any advice for our listeners who want to improve their speaking skills?
Daily practice is crucial. If you can, find a language partner or tutor to chat with regularly. It's like going to the gym for your speaking muscles.
But what if finding a partner is tricky? Are there ways to practice solo?
Absolutely. Use those speech recognition tools on your phone to check your pronunciation or record yourself speaking and analyze your fluency. You can even practice giving a presentation to an imaginary audience.
Okay, so even if you're shy, there are ways to work on speaking. That's reassuring.
Exactly. And remember, making mistakes is part of the process. It's how we learn. Don't be afraid to try, even if you're not perfect yet.
That's a great point to keep in mind. Now, speaking of tackling challenges, let's move on to reading. What kind of reading material should B2 learners be aiming for?
You should be comfortable reading a variety of texts. News articles, fiction and nonfiction books, maybe even some simpler technical documents related to your work or hobbies.
So we're graduating from children's books to the big leagues.
Exactly. And a great way to bridge that gap is with graded readers. These are books adapted for English learners with vocabulary and grammar tailored to different levels. They let you enjoy a story while still building your skills.
Graded readers sound like a good stepping stone. What are some other strategies for improving reading comprehension at the B2 level?
Here's a simple but powerful technique. After reading a section, summarize it in your own words. This forces you to actively process the information and make sure you've really understood it.
Summarizing, I like it. A good way to make sure you're not just skimming the words without absorbing the meaning.
Okay, on to writing. I have to admit, this one makes me nervous, even in my native language. What are the key writing skills B2 learners should be working on? At B2, you should be able to write clear, well-structured, and detailed pieces. Think about writing a blog post about your hobby, a persuasive email, or even a short story, all in English.
That sounds like a tall order. So we're going beyond simple emails and notes.
Definitely. It's about expressing your thoughts and opinions in a more organized and nuanced way.
Any specific activities to help us improve?
Daily journaling is a fantastic way to practice. Write about anything that comes to mind. Don't worry about perfection, just focus on expressing yourself.
Journaling is a great idea. It takes the pressure off and lets you experiment. What about more formal writing, like essays or reports?
Those are important too. You can practice writing summaries of articles you read, or even try writing a short essay on a topic you're interested in. And don't be shy about getting feedback from a teacher, tutor, or even online tools.
Getting feedback can be really helpful to pinpoint those areas we need to work on. Now, let's face it. Grammar often feels like the monster under the bed for language learners. What are some key grammar concepts that are crucial for B2 fluency?
You'll need to be comfortable with more advanced tenses, like the future perfect and past perfect continuous. I know the names sound intimidating, but they allow you to express more complex ideas about time.
Those do sound like a mouthful. What else is on the grammar checklist?
Mastering conditionals, including those tricky mixed conditionals and even the subjunctive mood. You'll also want to get a good grasp of the passive voice and expand your knowledge of phrasal verbs.
Wow, that's quite a bit to cover. And how important is it to be able to use complex sentence structures at the B2 level?
It's essential for expressing your ideas clearly and fluently. Think of it like this. Simple sentences are like the foundation of a house. They're necessary. But to build something interesting, you need more complex structures like walls, windows, and a roof.
So it's not just about knowing the grammar rules, but also about using them in a creative and sophisticated way.
Exactly. Grammar is a tool for communication. At B2, you're using that tool to build more complex and nuanced expressions.
That's a great way to think about it. Now, with all this talk about vocabulary, grammar, reading, writing, it can feel overwhelming. How can our listeners create a study plan that will help them stay on track and actually reach their B2 goals?
A structured schedule is key. Don't try to do everything at once. Start by setting realistic daily goals like, I'll spend 30 minutes reading an English article, or I'll learn 5 new words related to my hobby.
That sounds manageable. What about figuring out when to study? I know some people are morning people, while others are night owls.
Pay attention to your own rhythm. When are you most alert and focused? Schedule your study sessions for those times to make the most of your energy.
Makes sense. What about resources? There's so many apps, websites, textbooks. It can be hard to know where to start.
Experiment and find what works best for you. Some people thrive with online courses, others prefer traditional textbooks. And don't underestimate the power of real-world experiences like watching English movies, listening to music, or even joining a conversation group.
It's all about finding that balance between structured learning and enjoyable activities. But with all this studying, how can our listeners know if they're actually making progress?
Regularly assess your skills. Take online quizzes, do practice tests, or even ask a teacher for feedback. And don't forget the power of self-reflection. How comfortable do you feel using English now compared to a few months ago?
Self-awareness is definitely key. But with all this talk about studying, let's not forget to have fun along the way. Learning a language shouldn't feel like a chore.
Absolutely. Find ways to make it enjoyable. Watch a funny English language movie, listen to your favorite band, read a book that captivates you. When you're enjoying the process, learning becomes effortless.
That's a great reminder. It's all about finding that sweet spot where learning feels both productive and fun. We've covered a lot of ground today, but I think the key takeaway is that moving from A2 to B2 is a journey, not a sprint. It takes time, effort, and the right approach.
Exactly. And most importantly, it takes believing in yourself. You have the potential to achieve your language goals.
I love that. It's all about having a positive mindset and a willingness to learn and grow. Now, for our listeners who are ready to take the plunge and level up their English skills, what's your final piece of advice?
Start small, be consistent, and celebrate your progress along the way. Every step forward, no matter how small, is a victory.
Well said. And remember, learning a language opens up a whole new world of possibilities. It allows you to connect with people from different cultures, explore new ideas, and broaden your horizons.
Exactly. So for all our listeners out there, keep practicing, keep learning, and keep dreaming big.
It's funny, we often focus on the destination,
Yeah.
reaching that B2 level, but sometimes we forget to just enjoy the journey itself.
That's so true. Learning a language shouldn't feel like a chore. It's about exploring, experimenting, and even having a few laughs along the way.
Exactly. I remember when I first started learning Spanish, I was so focused on the grammar rules that I forgot to just relax and have fun with it.
Mm.
Once I started watching Spanish movies and listening to music, my progress really took off.
Yeah, that's because when you're enjoying yourself, your brain is more receptive to learning. You're not just memorizing rules, you're experiencing the language in a meaningful way.
Absolutely. It's like the difference between reading a dry textbook and having a lively conversation with a native speaker.
Yeah.
So how can our listeners find that balance between structured study and simply enjoying the language?
It's all about finding activities that align with your interests. If you love movies, watch them in English with subtitles. If you're a music buff, listen to English songs and try to decipher the lyrics. If you're a foodie, try following recipes in English.
Those are great ideas. It's about making English a part of your everyday life, not just something you study in isolation. But what about those times when motivation dips? We all have days when we just don't feel like hitting the books, right?
Absolutely, and that's perfectly normal. The key is to find ways to just reignite that spark. Maybe try something new, like joining an online language exchange group, watching a stand-up comedy show in English, or even reading a graphic novel.
Variety is key. Sometimes all it takes is a fresh perspective to get that motivation flowing again. Now, we've talked a lot about individual skills, but how important is it to integrate them all together?
Integration is essential for fluency. Think of it like this. Vocabulary is the building blocks. Grammar is the mortar that holds them together. And listening, speaking, reading, and writing are the different rooms in the house you're building.
I love that analogy. So it's not enough to just have a big vocabulary or perfect grammar. You need to be able to use all the skills together to communicate effectively.
Exactly. And the more you practice using those skills in combination, the more natural and effortless your communication will become.
So it's all about finding opportunities to use English in a holistic way. What are some specific activities that can help our listeners integrate their skills?
One great way is to find an online community where you can practice all four skills. Maybe a forum related to your hobby, a language exchange platform, or even a social media group where people chat in English.
That's a great idea. And what about using English for creative pursuits?
Absolutely. Writing a short story or poem in English, trying your hand at songwriting, or even composing a blog post can be incredibly rewarding and help you integrate your skills in a fun and engaging way.
Those are fantastic suggestions. It's amazing how many opportunities there are to practice English in a creative and fulfilling way. But sometimes, despite our best efforts, we hit roadblocks. We feel stuck, frustrated, like we're not making progress. What advice do you have for our listeners who are struggling with those feelings?
First and foremost, be kind to yourself. Learning a language takes time and effort. It's a marathon, not a sprint. There will be ups and downs along the way. It's important to acknowledge those challenges and find healthy ways to cope.
Yeah, I think it's easy to get discouraged when you compare yourself to others. Social media can make it seem like everyone is fluent except for you.
That's so true. It's important to remember that everyone learns at their own pace. Focus on your own journey and celebrate your own milestones, no matter how small they may seem.
Comparison is truly the thief of joy, especially when it comes to language learning. So how can our listeners stay motivated and positive on those days when they're feeling overwhelmed?
One helpful strategy is to break down your goals into smaller, more manageable chunks. Instead of focusing on reaching the B2 level, focus on mastering a specific grammar point, learning 10 new words related to your hobby, or watching a 15-minute English language video.
Small wins add up over time, and celebrating those wins, no matter how small, can boost your confidence and keep you going.
Exactly. It's about shifting your perspective from, I'm not there yet, to, look how far I've come.
That's such a powerful mindset shift. And speaking of perspective, it's important to remember that making mistakes is part of the learning process.
Absolutely. Mistakes are not failures, they're opportunities to learn and grow. Embrace your mistakes, analyze them, and use them to improve your skills.
I love that. It's about turning those oops moments into aha moments. Now, we've talked a lot about the internal challenges of language learning, but what about external factors? Things like finding the right resources, creating a supportive learning environment, or even dealing with negative feedback from others. How can our listeners navigate those hurdles?
When it comes to resources, there's a wealth of options available online and offline. Explore different language learning apps, websites, textbooks, and even local language courses to find what works best for you.
And what about creating a supportive learning environment? I know some people might feel self-conscious about practicing English in front of others, especially if they're not confident yet.
That's completely understandable. If you're feeling shy, start by practicing with someone you trust, like a friend, a family member, or even a fellow language learner. And remember, everyone makes mistakes. The important thing is to keep practicing and gradually build your confidence.
Finding a supportive community can make a huge difference. Are there any other tips you have for creating a positive learning environment?
Surround yourself with English as much as possible. Change the language settings on your phone and computer to English. Listen to English podcasts while you commute or do chores. Watch English movies and TV shows. The more you immerse yourself in the language, the faster you'll progress.
Immersion is key. It's like creating a mini England in your own home. But what about dealing with negative feedback from others? I've heard stories of people being laughed at or criticized for their accent or grammar mistakes. How can our listeners handle those situations?
Unfortunately, there will always be people who are insensitive or judgmental. It's important to remember that their negativity says more about them than it does about you. Focus on your goals and surround yourself with people who support and encourage you.
That's such an important reminder. Don't let the negativity of others derail your progress. Now, we've talked a lot about the challenges and strategies for moving from A2 to B2, but ultimately, what does success look like at the B2 level?
Success at the B2 level is about being able to communicate confidently and effectively in a variety of situations. It's about being able to express your thoughts and opinions clearly, understand complex information, and participate actively in conversations.
So it's not just about passing an exam or getting a certificate. It's about actually using the language in a real-world setting.
Exactly. It's about feeling comfortable and confident using English in your daily life, whether you're traveling, working, socializing, or simply pursuing your passions.
That's a great way to put it. It's about experiencing the world through the lens of English and all the opportunities it unlocks.
Absolutely. And remember, the journey to fluency is ongoing. Even when you reach the B2 level, there's always more to learn and explore.
That's so true. Language learning is a lifelong adventure. Now, for our listeners who are feeling inspired and motivated to continue their English journey, what's one piece of advice you would leave them with?
Believe in yourself, embrace the challenges, and never stop exploring the beauty and power of the English language.
Beautifully said. We've covered a lot of ground in this episode, from practical strategies to mindset shifts and even personal anecdotes. But ultimately, the key takeaway is that moving from A2 to B2 is an achievable goal for anyone who is willing to put in the effort and enjoy the journey.
Yeah, it truly is. It's a journey filled with so much potential for personal and even professional growth.
Absolutely. And it all starts with taking that first step.
So for all our listeners out there, what action will you take today to move closer to your B2 goals?
Maybe it's downloading a new language learning app,
Yeah,
picking up an English novel,
right.
or simply having a conversation with a friend in English.
Every step counts, no matter how small.
Well said. We hope this deep dive has given you the knowledge, the motivation, and maybe even a little bit of courage to take that next step on your English journey.
And remember, we're here to support you every step of the way.
Don't forget to subscribe and share the video with your friends. Bye, and see you next time. Bye-bye.